Okay, this is a video about setting up SSH both on a server, so it's ready for SSH connections, and on your client or your like your laptop or something, so that you can SSH into the server. So the first thing that we want to do is set up SSH on the server. So I'm using a VM as my server, but this could be any server that you have, right? So maybe you have a DigitalOcean droplet or an EC2 on Amazon, and you want to set up SSH capabilities. So the first thing you want to do is install the SSH server software that handles the SSH connections for you. So you could do this with like sudo apt update. This is gonna update your apt software, and then we're going to use that to install openssh-server. This might run for a second, so I'm going to pause the video and I will be right back once this is done running. Okay, once that's done, then you're going to use it to install openssh-server. So sudo apt install openssh-server. I've already installed this on this machine, so that ran real quick, but once again, it might take a minute for yours to run. And then if that's true, you can pause the video and come back when it's done. And then we just want to check that SSH is running now. So you can do like sudo systemctl status SSH, and you should get this active running message. If not, then your install may not have worked and you may need to redo that. Last thing you want to do is make sure that your firewall allows SSH. Ubuntu specifically comes with default settings that might not. So you can do sudo UFW, which I'm pretty sure stands for Ubuntu Firewall, allow SSH. And I've already done that, so it's saying that it's skipping that rule. And then if you want to ever turn that off, you can do sudo UFW deny SSH instead. I'm going to do allow again because I do want SSH active. So anyways, that's how you can change that firewall setting. So now theoretically, SSH is ready to go on the server. So on the client side, you can SSH onto that server. And you do that with an SSH command. So SSH, and you say the name of the user you're SSHing in as, then the IP address of where you're SSHing to, which in my case, this is a VM on my machine. So it's just localhost 127.0.0.1. And then for me also, I have a port. You may not need to do this if you're doing it for like a public, like if you have a droplet or an EC2 or something, you probably don't need to specify a port. You just SSH and it'll work. But for my VM, I need to, and then this will be the password of the VM user or the server user that you're SSHing in as. And I'm in. So the server is now set up and you can SSH in. So now let's talk for a second about SSH keys. There's, you can Google it and read up on it and learn different schools of thought, I guess, about using passwords versus keys. The thing about an SSH password is from anywhere in the world, I can SSH into the machine. If I know somebody's password, I can get onto their server. And so that's maybe not super secure, especially because humans are known to have weak passwords. So if it's like the name of their dog or something, like you can guess their password and you can get on their server. And once you're on their server, you can grab all their data, you can mess stuff up, you can do all kinds of stupid stuff. So if you don't want people hacking in, then you can use a really secure password. That's one option. But what if you have other users on your team and one of them doesn't have a secure password, right? So there's this whole idea of using SSH keys instead. The difference with an SSH key is only computers. So if I'm on my laptop and I want to SSH to an EC2 instance on AWS, only computers that have the right SSH key can SSH in. So that limits who can SSH in. I guess the weakness there, though, is that any human who is using my laptop could SSH in, right? Because my laptop now is the one that knows how to get on the server, not me. So I don't know, there's pros and cons, I guess, but the SSH keys generally tend to be more secure, and it's how a lot of people do it. So let's talk about setting that up. This openssh server is, where did I install it? Right there. That guy, he already knows how to use SSH keys, so we just need to add one and we're ready to go. So on the client, so for when you're looking at this, the purple one is my server and the white one is my laptop. So I'm doing both here, but I'm kind of showing you the setup for both. So on the machine that you're trying to use to SSH, you're gonna generate a SSH key. I actually don't remember the command, so I'm going to Google it. SSH.com seems like a reliable. Looks like there was another one that I had clicked on as well. Yeah, they both probably give you the same kind of thing. There's a specific kind that I'm trying to do. Let me go back to that SSH.com. I think it tells us. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. -T, is that a thing? Now, here I am wasting your time looking at this. There was one I found that had a good one for me. Well, let's just try this and see what happens. I think you just do like SSH keygen or key-gen. All right, hold on. SSH-keygen. There we go. Okay, SSH-keygen. And I think you can, there's some options here. You can specify like what cipher you want to use and a couple different things, but I think this will work. So I'm just going to do that. Oh, I am on my, I'm SSH'd in. I'm going to exit. So you want to do this on your laptop, right? On the machine that you're using to SSH. This is where you want to run this command. SSH-keygen, creating a public-private RSA key pair. Enter the file in which to save the key. I already have a file called ID_RSA, and that's actually the key that I use to SSH everywhere. So I'm gonna do a different one. I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna call it ID_RSA test. If you want to enter a passphrase, you can enter the same one both times. If you don't want one, you can just click enter. That's fine. And now if I ls, you can see that I have my key. This is the one that I use all over. I don't know if I actually even have it. I think I just have one for like GitHub. Anyways, then this is the new one that I just generated. So let's take a peek at those. If I cat ID_RSA test.pub, that's your public half of the key. And then this is the private half of the key, and the private one's way longer. The private one is one you don't want people to see, and here I am showing you, but I'm just going to delete this key afterwards. The public one is the one you will copy onto the server. And then when you try and SSH, your computer will basically sign the request. This is my understanding. Sign the request using the private key. The server will get the request, and it can check that this, with the public key, it can check that it was signed with the right private key, so it knows that you have the right key without knowing what the key is. Okay, so now I just need to put this on the server. So there's a couple different ways you can do that. There's a really easy one called SSH copy ID. This is the command that most people probably use. So you do SSH copy ID -I. And then we're also going to do -P5679. If you're doing this for a server where you don't have to specify the port to do the SSH, you can get rid of this -P part. But I'm using my VM, so I have to do port 5679. And then we're going to say what file I want to copy. In this case, it's in my user's home directory, .ssh, ID_RSA test.pub. So this is the file that I want to copy, and then you say where you want to copy it to. In my case, I'm going to copy it. This is for my user on my VMs, or on my server, right? So Lauren at 127.0.0.1. And I think that's it. I'm just going to hit enter. Illegal option -P. It needs to be capital P, I believe, for this command. Let's just see if that works. Maybe it's in the wrong spot. Okay. I think it is in the wrong spot. I think this -I might be referencing this file. So do your -P after that if you need to. And I'm going to try lowercase p. It worked. Okay. So that's the command. SSH copy ID. -I and the location of the file you want to copy, -P port number if you need it, user at IP address. Okay. Okay, so now this is asking for that. So this is as if you're SSHing in. What's the password for that user on that server? And basically this command is going to SSH in for me and drop that key in there. So number of keys added, 1. Now try logging into the machine. Okay, so we'll try an SSH again. SSH port 5679, Lauren at IP address 127.0.0.1. And now it should log me in without asking for my password. Ooh, it still did. Well, let's log in and see what we got. .ssh, authorized keys, there it is. So basically this is what it is, right? For my user on this server, I have this authorized keys file, and every server has its own authorized keys file. And any key you put into this authorized keys file, that key is now able to log in as that user. So let's go look at this file. And that SSH copy command that we did, sorry, let me get back out for a second. This SSH copy ID, wherever it did it at. This is the command that did that for me. It went and created that file, or if that file's already there, it'll add this key to the file. Okay, so anyways, let's look at the file again. It's basically just a text file, and every single line will be a separate key. So you can have multiple keys if you want. And I think what the issue is my computer is, by default, it's trying to use this other one. So that's the one I probably should copy on. And I actually don't know enough about this, but I'm pretty sure you can copy on, no, hold on. I want to pause the video and go Google it, and then I can tell you. Okay, so I just looked it up. And I've actually done this before, so once I looked it up, it rang a bell. So if I had copied this one onto my server, then that SSH would have worked without my password. And we could do that. But it's okay if you have multiple keys. You just need to tell your SSH and say, when you're trying to connect to this host, use this key. When you're trying to connect to this other host, use this other key. And that's fine. So you can create this config file. So inside of your SSH folder, for your user, you create this config file. And then let's go put some stuff in here. So this is the example it gives. Host identity file. So I'm just going to copy this into here. Interesting. Okay, so anything.github.anything, use this file. SSH/, I think mine's ID RSA. Host, anything else, use this other file. And for me, it's that ID RSA test. So that's how I'm reading this. You can put specific IPs in here. Wait, what did I just do? Cancel. Oh, I think my numlock was off. Yeah. Where's numlock? Let's use these keys for a second. 127.0.0.1. So for this host, use this identity file, and for GitHub, I'll use this other one. Okay, so I'm going to save and exit that. And I'm going to try that SSH again. Didn't ask for my password that time, because now it knows which file to use. Okay, so that is how you can set up an SSH key. That's where to put it on the server. Inside of your server, it's home/.ssh/authorized keys, and you'll put that in there with that SSH copy ID command. On your client, it's just home/.ssh, and then you can have multiple keys in there. If you do have multiple keys, you probably need a config file. that config file you can set up and say for specific IP addresses or domains what am I saying? What key it should use. I'm just going to do that for now. Okay. So now for a second, let's talk about on the server side. Once you have this working and set up, you might decide that you only want to allow, because right now I can still SSH with my password. So maybe you want to disallow that and only allow SSH keys to get onto your server. That's a common thing that people do. So now real quick, one other thing I just want to mention is if that SSH copy ID command doesn't work, or if you just want to see a different way to do it, you can also use SCP, which is a secure copy. So you could do SCP, and this one does need a capital P for the port, 5679. And then you're going to say what file you want to copy. Well, let's do this for a second. I'm going to copy my other one. No, I'm not. Hold on. We'll just do this. Okay, so I'm going to grab this idRSA test.public file, and then you say where you want to send it. And this is a secure copy, so this is like, this is going to use SSH to do the copy. So I'm going to do it as Lauren at 127.0.0.1, and then once it's in, you do a colon and say, once it's in, where do you want me to put it? For that user, it'll just be in the home/.ssh directory. And I could give it a name here, and I will. I'm just going to say testing.pub. Oh, no. I think it does just need a directory. Let's do that and see what happens. Oh, okay. So it did it, and it called it idRSA test.pub. So now if I SSH back in, doesn't look like it worked. Hold on. Lauren at 127.0.1.ssh. Oh, I did a typo and I did it .ssh. So is that a thing? I don't know where that went. Let me try that again. Let me fix the typo. SSH. There we go. And now if I SSH back into my server, there it is. Okay, so that copied it on, and now you basically just need to grab the value out of there and put it in your authorized keys file, which you could do. Mine's already working, so I'm not going to worry about it, but that's another way to get the SSH key onto your server. Okay, now in order to disable, actually I do want to go back in there. So on the server, SSH into your server, or you could do it from your VM or whatever, but the way to disable password authentication for SSH is sudo nano /etc/ssh/sshd_config. So this is the SSH daemon config file. And this is all of the settings. So when you downloaded that openssh server, these are all the settings that control how it functions. So you can put these anywhere in this file, but I like to do it right here on this authentication. I don't know if that's the right spot, but that's what makes sense to me. So there's two things we need to add. One is password authentication, no. And this is capitalize the first letter of every word for these. And the second one, challenge response authentication, no. It's really important not to get a typo on these. Make sure you spell them right. Make sure you capitalize the first letter of each word. And then I can save and exit. And then you need to restart your SSH daemon with sudo systemctl restart SSHD. Done. Now if I exit and try and get back in again, SSH, I have the SSH key, so it works and it lets me in. But now let's go delete my SSH key. Nano authorized keys. I'm going to get rid of this guy. Save and exit. Now he's empty. Now if I exit and try and SSH back in again, I don't have an SSH key on the server, and it's not even giving me the option for password authentication anymore. It just denies me. So now you can only SSH in with SSH keys. No password SSH will be allowed. I think that's everything that I know about it. I'm sure there's much, much more you could do, but that is a real basic setup for setting up SSH on your server and on your laptop. And yeah, that's it for me.